My wife used to tell me I was paranoid. She'd smile, tilt her head just enough to look sweet, and whisper, "You're imagining things, honey. You're working too hard. You need to trust me." And I believed her. For years I believed her. My name is Marcus Lane. I'm 42, and for most of my adult life I thought I had built the perfect marriage. I gave up promotions, passed on travel opportunities, and cut down on late nights at the office just so I could be the husband she said she needed. I thought sacrifice was the proof of love. But slowly, little cracks began to show. She started locking her phone. She said it was because of work emails. She stayed late at meetings. That seemed to happen more often than anyone else's. When I asked, she'd laugh softly and stroke my cheek, as though my questions were adorable but baseless. "Marcus," she'd say, "you're paranoid. Don't ruin what we have with your doubts." And like a fool I let it go. But inside, I felt the gnawing of something colder. Every time I smelled a cologne that wasn't mine on her jacket, every time she came home smiling at nothing, I swallowed the suspicion like poison. Then one night I saw it. I woke at 2 a.m. to get a glass of water. Her phone lit up on the dresser. A message flashed across the screen. "Can't wait to see you again." "Same hotel?" My throat tightened. My hands shook. But I didn't touch the phone. Not yet. I stood there in the dark, staring at the glow until it faded back to black. I realized then. I wasn't paranoid. I was married to a liar. Backhand index pointing right. What would you do if you saw that message on your spouse's phone? Would you confront them immediately, or would you wait, like I did, to make the revenge even sweeter? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Fire, and don't forget, subscribe to Sweetest Revenge for more shocking stories where betrayal cuts deep and revenge comes back stronger. The next morning, I pretended nothing had happened. But in my mind, the game had already begun. The morning after I saw that message, I woke up before my wife did. She stretched, kissed my cheek, and asked if I wanted pancakes. I smiled, nodded, and played along like nothing had changed. Inside, though, my blood ran cold. I was staring at a woman who had been lying to my face for who knows how long. Her name is Claire. We've been married 15 years. To the world, she's polished, put together, charming. She laughs at parties, always dresses well, and has this uncanny way of making people feel like they're the most important person in the room. That's the version everyone else sees. But the version I saw that night, the one who was sneaking off to hotels with someone else, was a stranger. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I started pretending. Every morning, I kissed her goodbye before work. I asked about her day. I let her spin stories about late meetings and urgent deadlines. But behind the mask, I began watching her every move. I checked our bank accounts, noticed new charges at restaurants we never went to, hotel stays in neighborhoods we never visited. I started taking photos of receipts she left in the trash. When she said she was working late, I called her office line from a burner phone I'd picked up. No answer. I drove past the office parking lot a few times, too. Her car wasn't there. The hardest part wasn't the waiting. It was pretending to be stupid enough to believe her. One night, while she was in the shower, I borrowed her phone. She never let it out of her sight, but I'd learned her passcode months ago, back when I thought I was just being an overprotective husband. This time, I went through her messages. There he was. A contact saved under the name Coach. The texts were disgusting, flirtations, hotel room numbers, talk of nights stayed. Never forget. And then I saw his name. Ethan Cole. My best friend. The man who had been my groomsman at our wedding. The man who stood beside me when we buried my father. The man I had trusted with my life. I nearly dropped the phone, my hands shaking with rage. But I'd put it back exactly where she'd left it. I couldn't let her know I'd seen it. Not yet. Because if I confronted them right then, they'd lie, twist the story, make me the crazy husband again. No. I needed proof so clear, so undeniable, that neither of them could escape it. From that moment, every smile I gave Claire was fake. Every laugh we shared was rehearsed. I was done being the fool she thought I was. I started documenting everything: photos, screenshots, credit card records. I even hired a private investigator for the things I couldn't do myself. Each piece of evidence was another nail in the coffin of the marriage I thought I had. And while I gathered the proof, I started planning the revenge. Backhand index pointing right. Let me ask you, what would you do if you discovered your spouse was cheating with your best friend? Would you confront them both at once, or stay quiet until you had the power to destroy them? Tell me in the comments. Fire, and don't forget, subscribe to Sweetest Revenge for more stories where betrayal meets its brutal payback. By the time I finished gathering my evidence, I no longer looked at my wife with love. I looked at her the way a surgeon looks at a tumor. She didn't know it yet, but her lies had already started to unravel. The hardest part about betrayal isn't the lies. It's the routine. I'd wake up every morning, eat the same breakfast, kiss Claire on the cheek, and head to work. On the surface, nothing had changed. But inside, I was a storm. Every smile I gave her was a mask. Every kind word was a weapon I was sharpening quietly. And Ethan, the thought of him burned me even worse. He'd sit across from me at poker nights with the guys, laugh at my jokes, pat my back like a brother. All the while, he was sneaking into hotel rooms with my wife. But the thing about betrayal is, it makes you patient. Once you realize you've been lied to, you stop rushing. You stop needing answers. You wait, because you know the truth is already yours. So I kept waiting. And I let them think I was blind. Claire became bolder as the weeks passed. She'd come home later, her excuses thinner. She stopped bothering to erase all the evidence on her phone. Once, she even forgot to change clothes before walking through the door, the faintest trace of Ethan's cologne clinging to her blouse. I said nothing. I poured her a glass of wine, kissed her forehead, and told her I was proud of how hard she worked. She smiled, relieved. She thought she had me wrapped around her finger. What she didn't know was that every lie was another page in the file I was building. The investigator I'd hired was worth every dollar. Photos of Claire and Ethan at restaurants, leaving hotels, even holding hands in parking lots. Phone records confirming their late-night conversations. Bank statements linking her credit card to his. It was all there, piling up into a mountain too high for either of them to climb down from. Still, I didn't confront them. Not yet. Because I wanted more than truth. I wanted devastation. I began setting subtle traps. A business trip, I claimed to have, when really I stayed 2 blocks from the hotel they used. A forgotten jacket I, accidentally, left in Ethan's car, which he had to scramble to return before Claire saw it. Little reminders that maybe, just maybe, I was still close by. Each time, I watched the panic flicker in their eyes before they covered it with laughter. They told themselves I was too trusting, too blind. And I let them. The breaking point came on our 15th anniversary. Claire told me she was working late, said she'd make it up to me with a weekend away. I kissed her cheek and told her not to worry. An hour later, I was parked outside the hotel. Through the glass doors I saw her, dressed in the red dress I bought her years ago, laughing like a woman who hadn't lied every day for months. Ethan met her in the lobby. He touched her arm the way I used to. They walked into the elevator together, smiling, oblivious. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. For a moment, I almost marched inside, dragged them out, and ended it then and there. But I didn't. Because revenge tastes better when it's served cold. And theirs wasn't ready yet. Backhand index pointing right. What would you have done in that moment? Stormed in and exposed them both, or waited like I did to make sure the fall was complete? Let me know in the comments. Fire, and don't forget to subscribe to Sweetest Revenge, because this isn't just about catching cheaters, it's about watching them collapse under the weight of their own lies. That night, sitting in my car while my wife celebrated an anniversary with another man, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't just end the marriage. I would end their comfort. I would end their lies. And I would make sure they both remembered my silence, before I broke it. The truth has a weight to it. Once you pick it up, you can't pretend it's light anymore. That's what happened to me. The moment I decided I wouldn't confront them in a fury, everything shifted from pain into purpose. I started with money, because money is concrete, traceable, and it cuts through the fog liars try to hide behind. I quietly closed the joint credit cards and redirected automatic payments into accounts she couldn't touch. I called our mortgage company under the pretense of consolidating loans and arranged that all new statements would be emailed to a separate, private address. It felt petty, maybe, but it was also practical. If she planned to run with him, she shouldn't get a head start spending what I'd built. Next, I prepared the legal scaffolding. I met with an attorney who specializes in marital asset protection and gave him the file, the screenshots, the receipts, the PI photos. He listened without blinking, then said exactly what I expected, a calm, brutal truth. This is enough. We can move, but timing matters. Timing. The word became its own kind of weapon. We drew up temporary orders, drafted a complaint, and set contingencies for how and when to serve papers so that neither Claire nor Ethan could bury the truth in excuses. While the paperwork solidified, I kept living the lie of normalcy. I played catch in the backyard with the kids. I fixed the leaky sink myself. I made pancakes on Sunday mornings and asked about her day, soft and patient, as if nothing had changed. The longer I pretended, the more audacious they became. Claire began leaving her phone on the coffee table, asleep-faced and careless. Ethan sent messages that could be read in full if you knew where to look. They relied on habit, on the idea that I was a man broken by suspicion rather than a man sharpening a blade. That's when I let the knife be forged in public. I booked a business trip that conveniently put me in the city where Ethan lived. I rented a cheap hotel, 1 block from the boutique where they'd started meeting months earlier. I didn't confront them that week, though I had opportunities. Instead, I recorded conversations as proof, covertly captured meetings between Ethan and his friends where they laughed about how easy it was to fool me, the ways they'd hide messages, the jokes about planning their next weekend getaway. It was ugly to hear it, but it completed the mosaic. At home, I began planting seeds of truth I knew would sprout in the right light. I left a printed receipt from a hotel on the kitchen counter, placed a hotel keycard peeking from between cushions, and forgot that I'd seen Claire's lipstick on the collar of one of Ethan's old shirts when he'd come to drop it off. Small things that would make them flinch, that would make neighbors notice, that would make them start to misstep. People under pressure always misstep. 2 weeks before I intended to move, I called Claire into the living room. The kids were at school. The house was quiet. I handed her an envelope and watched her face change when she saw what was inside, a thick stack of photos, bank statements, and a printout of messages with timestamps. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. She looked like someone seeing a ghost. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. I folded my hands and looked at her as if seeing the woman I'd loved and the woman who'd betrayed me at once. "You already did," I said. "I just waited until I was ready." Her eyes darted to the doorway as if Ethan might appear and sweep everything into easy denial. She didn't know he'd already been recorded saying the words that would make denial impossible. I didn't call the lawyer right then. I didn't hand her divorce papers in that moment. I wanted the theater, the moment when their comfortable lies would be exposed in a way that even their bravado couldn't patch. So I gave her one last chance to be decent on her own terms, come clean, tell the kids, go to therapy, ask for forgiveness. Anything that showed remorse. She sat down and cried for a long time without saying a word that mattered. 2 days later, Ethan showed up at our house. He said he wanted to talk. Man to man. He wore that same easy grin I'd watched for years. He strolled into the living room like a winner. I didn't rise. I let him think I was still the same husband who'd hand him a beer and laugh about work. While he searched for the right small talk, I pressed play on my phone. A voice filled the room, Ethan's voice, clear and unadorned, joking about the thrill of getting caught, laughing about how Marcus was too soft to ever challenge them. He used language that was intimate and vulgar, words that didn't belong in any friendship. Ethan reached for me as if to slap my back, but his hand froze, then fell to his side. He looked at Claire and finally at me with a raw, animal fear. "What is this?" he said. "What it is," I replied, "is proof." I slid the envelope across the table. Front page prints of the recorded conversation, hotel reservations, credit card charges, and the PI photos. Ethan's smile dissolved into a face I'd never seen before, a frightened man who realized his life depended on the fragile fiction he'd been living in public. That night, I served them both with paperwork. The documents were precise: temporary restraining orders around our finances, custody contingencies, and a complaint that outlined infidelity with corroborating evidence. We didn't make a scene. The papers were served quietly, like the closing of a chapter. But the effects rippled outward fast. Neighbors who had once waved started to look past them. Ethan's friends avoided eye contact at poker night. Claire stopped answering the door when people came by to drop off casseroles the way neighbors do. The confidence that had sustained them fractured. Where once they were bold and careless, now they were furtive and angry, and anger, without the safety of secrecy, is a dangerous thing. I watched it all unfold with a strange mix of sorrow and relief. Sorrow for the life I'd imagined and relief that the truth finally had room to breathe. When the kids asked why Mommy and Ethan weren't around like before, I told them that grown-ups sometimes make mistakes and that we would handle it. I told them the truth as gently as I could, because my role now wasn't to punish, it was to protect them. Before I sign off this part, I want to hear from you. If you found your spouse's betrayal wrapped up with your best friend's betrayal, would you expose everything immediately, or would you build an airtight case like I did? Drop your answer below. Fire, and don't forget, subscribe to Sweetest Revenge for more stories where patience and proof beat the loudest lies. There was one last move to make, and it needed to be public, precise, and inescapable. I'd bought the stage. All I had to do was wait for the curtain to rise. There was one last move to make, and it needed to be public, precise, and inescapable. I'd bought the stage. All I had to do was wait for the curtain to rise. The perfect opportunity came at a family gathering 2 weeks later. Claire's parents were celebrating their 40th anniversary, and the house was filled with relatives, friends, neighbors, people who all believed we were still the happy couple we pretended to be. Ethan was there too, of course. He couldn't resist showing up, grinning, clapping me on the back, pretending nothing was wrong. That was exactly what I wanted. When the cake was brought out and the toasts began, I stood. Glass in hand, I smiled as if ready to honor my in-laws. The chatter faded, and dozens of eyes turned toward me. Claire reached for my arm, confused. Ethan's grin faltered. "I'd like to say a few words," I began. "Not just about love and marriage, but about truth." The room quieted. I felt my pulse steady, not from nerves but from resolve. For 15 years, I believed I was married to a woman who loved me. I believed my best friend was loyal. And when doubts crept in, I told myself I was paranoid. That's the word Claire liked to use, paranoid. A ripple moved through the crowd. Claire's face drained of color. Ethan froze, his hand tightening around his glass. "But paranoia becomes reality," I continued, "when you find hotel receipts, text messages, and photographs. When the two people you trusted most turn your sacrifices into a joke." I held up the folder I'd carried in with me. Inside were photos, messages, proof. The investigator's work. I placed it on the table in front of Claire and Ethan like an offering. Gasps filled the room. "Here's the truth," I said. "For months, my wife and my best friend have been meeting behind my back. And while they lied to me, I gathered everything, every receipt, every message, every laugh at my expense. Tonight, I'm done being the fool." Claire whispered, "Marcus, please." But her voice cracked. Ethan tried to stammer something, but Walter, the investigator I'd hired, stepped forward from the back of the room and confirmed it. Everything in this folder checks out. Dates, places, times. No doubt about it. The silence was deafening. My in-laws looked shattered. Neighbors stared, whispering. Claire buried her face in her hands. Ethan's confidence collapsed, his eyes darting for a door he couldn't find. I raised my glass one last time. So here's to 40 years of loyalty, I said, nodding to my in-laws. Because loyalty is rare. And when you find it, you celebrate it. As for the rest, let the truth speak louder than lies. I set my glass down, turned, and walked out into the night. Behind me, the whispers rose like a storm. Backhand index pointing right. If you were in my place, would you have kept it private, or exposed them in front of everyone the way I did? Tell me in the comments. Fire, and don't forget, subscribe to Sweetest Revenge for more stories where betrayal is met with justice, and patience makes the payoff unforgettable. For the first time in months, the air felt clean in my lungs. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't broken. I was free.